I am Kaye Bird, Kaye Marie Golatz Bird. I'm the mother of 4 boys and 1 girl, 4 boys in six years, and 8 years later we've had our little girl, Melinda. I got married at the age of 16, and from there our family got started. I went to Forest Elementary School, and we were able to walk. I lived in Sugar House, and we were able to walk over to the school. I loved school. I had a hard time saying words with the R, and so they put me in a special class to learn how to roll my tongue so I could say R's. And I remember in kindergarten, we had a grocery store at the school, and we all had to bring our favorite food. I took a box of Aunt Jemima's hot cereal, and when I got up and explained what I had, I said I had the nigger mush. If that was it today, it would really be a no-no, but nobody really thought too much about it back in those days. Being a 4-year-old kindergarten, I guess I didn't know any better. Like I said, I enjoyed school. I had a twin sister that we went all the way through school. A lot of the classes, all through elementary school, we were always together. Junior high and high school, we kind of had some of the separated classes. But I grew up in a home with 2 bedrooms. We had 4 girls in 1 bedroom. We had 2 full-size beds. And my dad finally went out and bought bunk beds. And so I had a top bunk. My twin was on the bottom. My little sister had the big top bunk on the other one, and my big sister had the lower bunk. We really enjoyed being in the bedroom together. When we woke up, we had a coal stove, and we'd wake up to see the flames dancing on the wall in the kitchen. My dad had started the fire to keep us warm, but we had a lot of fun with it. We had 1 bathroom with 4 girls getting ready to go to school and doing our hair. We didn't have a mirror in our bedroom. We all just took our turn, and there was no problem. We lived in Sugar House, right across the railroad tracks from Fairmont Park. So we spent most of our time at the park. We had a nice little recreation center we went to, and we could do artwork or make characters out of soap, ivory soap. We spent hours and hours over there, but there was always something to do. They also had the swimming pool, and we spent a lot of our time in the swimming pool, learned to swim there, and I was always more of a daring person, but I never dared to go up a high dive. So one day I decided I was going to be real smart and do it. Well, I got up the end, standing up, and decided I couldn't do it. But something inside me told me I had to do it. So I just jumped feet first off the high dive, and I'd love to do it from there on. The swimming pool was something that kept us 4 girls, gave us something to do during the day. We never had to worry about going out of our neighborhood. We had everything right there. My dad is from Germany, and he came over when he was 14 years old, and he spent some time in the prison in Sugar House. He had stolen some money from his mom's purse, from what we understand. We didn't know anything about this until the last few years. But when he was in prison, he learned to he made the wall, helped do the wall around the prison with the rock work. And that's how he started in doing he had a flagstone business. And that's how he got started in that. But my mom and dad moved to Sugar House when My sister was about 1 year old. So we were all, the rest of us were born in Sugar House. We had a neighbor, Dorothy Golightly, that would come down and get us every Sunday morning and walk us to church. And we had little fur coats on with little hats, but it was just a fun way to get started on Sunday mornings. Fun story was when I was a little girl, had a sister 1.5 years older, and then her twin sister and a little sister. Well, I couldn't say, I want a drink. It was always me want a drink, me want this, me want that. So my mom started to, I can't remember if it was a piece of candy she gave me, but every time I would say I would be rewarded for saying I, because I could not. It was always me. I haven't 4 little girls like that. We grew up together as best friends. I was closer to my little sister, just being a little over a year younger than I was my twin, because I liked the outside and she preferred sewing and doing stuff inside. So we've always been good friends. We always will be. But I was closer to my sister Pat. She passed away 10 years ago, and to this day, it's the hardest thing I've had to get over. But we still, her husband and my husband, were best friends, and my little sister's husband, Les, got remarried, and we still go on trips with Les and Paula, and they live in Branson. We go to Branson and go through to the shows, but most of our vacations have been taken with Les and either my sister Pat or Les's new wife Paula, and we've really enjoyed. He is still our brother-in-law and best friend, and we really do everything together. But he lives in Branson, Missouri now. But so we don't see quite as much of him. But it was just a fun part of my little sister's life, being a foursome with her and her husband and boyfriend. My mother and dad were not. My mother's LDS, but my dad wasn't. And as far as we know, he probably was a Catholic, but he never talked about it. My dad was a very sentimental. He had a hard time talking about his home life in Germany. He came over when he was 14 years old, and he was like a stowaway on a ship. But after he did his prison term, my mom met him through some relatives and at some kind of a dance. But when they got married, they lived in an apartment on 7th East up about 5th South, and that's where my oldest sister was born. But then they moved into Sugar House, and 18 months later, they had my twin and I, Ray and Kaye, and then about 18 months later, they got my little sister, Pat. We used to call her Patty. But we just had a fun growing up. You couldn't have asked for a better lifestyle for us. But when my dad started his rock work in the backyard, he had they did everything with just a chisel, hammer and chisel. They cut the rock to the sizes. And he had a place in Park City where he would go up and get his rock work. That was his place to go. But they would cut everything out with just the chisels and a hammer. And us girls would go up with him a lot of times and just run around the rocks. And we once brought a turtle home from there, but we don't know what happened to the turtle through the years. But anyway, we had a lot of fun just running around and watching my dad up in that big quarry. with a chisel and hammer, and what a hard worker he was. But we don't know much about my dad in his past. He was a very emotional, very sentimental, and if he got a letter from home, we never got to we couldn't read it because it was in German, but he might tell us a couple of things. But one thing was they wanted him to send them some coffee, but he would never talk about the old days. And so it was hard to learn about my dad's life. But my mom grew up in Salt Lake, and there were 11 kids in her family. And my grandma and Grandpa Vanquil, we spent lots of time with them. And when they'd come over at the house, my grandpa would be sitting in a chair by our coal stove in our living room. We had a little coal stove to keep us warm. And us kids would hide behind the coal stove and come out when he came. But it was just a lot of fun. And he wasn't around too many years. We didn't get to know a lot about Grandpa Vanquil. But my Grandma Vanquil, my mom's mom, we was around her a lot. And she lived, I think she died in 57. We had our first son in 56, and she actually opened his bank account with a $1 bill over a Walker Bank. But she didn't live much longer than that, and we sure missed her. She was hard of hearing. You had to really talk loud, but she was a special little lady. We really enjoyed her. And my sister and I, when she lived in her apartment, my twin, we would go stay overnight at Grandma Vanquil's, and she had a little penny store across the street from her, and we'd take a dime and we'd go over to the little penny store and buy a little candy and bring bags to have while we slept overnight at Grandma's house. But it was just something that we always think about and we'll always remember Grandma for. My Grandma and Grandpa Vanquil, my mom's mom and dad were born in, she was born in Kiel, Germany, and my grandma was in Norway. So, and where my dad was born in Germany, Gospig, Austria, I think actually is where the last we heard he was born. But we have no papers and nothing to really go on for it. Our first boy, I guess I should talk about our first boy first. He was a little 5 pound, 6 ounce boy. He's turned out to be 6 feet 3 inches, and he's just a tall, slender kid. But he has 6 kids of his own. He's helped us with adding on to our grandkids. But he's married and he's got 5 kids. And 6, 7, 8, he's just expecting their 8th grandchild. The first marriage, he was married to a gal, Chris Day, and they had their first boy, Don. And they later got a divorce. Our grandson that brought us here today and got us going on this is the son of our son, Don, our oldest son, and his first wife, Chris Day. And he is the one that got us started with this today. But later, my dad married Kirsty, and they have 3 kids, Brandon, Brittany, and Kelsey. But Jason, his son from this first marriage, is just part of the whole family. We're just all complete. Our second son, Randall John Bird, had 2 sons, Keith and Kenny, both little red-headed boys. They're the light of our lives. But we had another divorce in the family. And Randy and Chris Lamborn were divorced. And Randy never remarried. He came out to us that he was gay, and we accepted it. We didn't expect it, but we accepted it. But he was a very good dad to his two boys, to Keith and Kenny, and we had a lot of fun in the growing up years. Our third son married Laurie, and they had a boy, Jared, and a girl, Jessica. And again, we had a very fun life. And again, we had another divorce, which really hurt me. But the kids, the family has all stayed together, including the ex-wives. We do see them. But Kevin ended up getting married again to Sandy. Sandy had 3 girls, so now they have a family of 5, which they're all included in all of our family. Our youngest son, Brian, got married to Jean Balk, and he had a son. Which we really don't get to see. There was a problem with their divorce, and we were told as grandparents that there was no way we could get to see him. We have seen him a couple of times in the later years, and he looks just like his dad, but his dad doesn't get to see him, and we really feel bad about that, because our family is family, and we've always, no matter what's gone wrong, we have always stayed as a combined family. Our daughter was born 8 years after our last son, having 4 boys in 6 years, and 8 years later got a beautiful little girl. We named her Melinda Kaye. When we were at the hospital having Melinda, the boys' dad, Don, my husband Don, brought the boys up, and they sat out by the car, and we held the baby little girl up to the window for her to watch. And it was a very exciting, took her home on Mother's Day, and it was just the little girl that we had always wanted to be. We enjoyed our little boys. I can't say how much I enjoyed my 4 boys. We did everything together. I would get my work done by 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was outside with my boys. But it's just the way I wanted it, and I did everything with them. I can tell you a moment that I didn't enjoy. We had them all through Eagle Scout. They all 4 got their Eagle Scout award, which was such a pleasure for me to be up on the stand with them when they were awarded their Eagle Scout badges. It's something that I don't think we ever thought we would be able to do, but it was a lot of work especially the mom. It was really a lot of work to work with the boys. When Melinda came to join our family, I was working at the toy store when she was a little girl, and I had a neighbor that would take her, and then the boys would pick her up after school and take her home and take care of her. During her school, she was in dance and different things at school that the boys didn't do. But I thoroughly enjoyed my little girl. We had a little boy that grew up behind us that was born just the month after Melinda, little Kirk. And Melinda was born in May. Kirk was born in July. He was born without legs. He had his feet were hooked onto a little part of some legs. But he turned out, his mom and dad called us, Don, my husband and I, Don, up to the hospital before they called anybody else to come up and see their little boy. And I remembered the tears. But Melinda, our daughter, and Kirk were best friends growing up. And Kirk was able to do everything. He rode a skateboard. He sat on a little skateboard and rode around. He got artificial legs, but he really didn't like his legs. And most of the time you'd see him without him, just on his little stumps. He was able to go camping and go hunting on his own. He learned to drive as he got older. He had his special gears put in his car. It was Melinda and Kirk were just best friends, and we were glad to see that Kirk has lived and still living a very active life. And we think about him all the time, and our daughter they were great friends. I worked in the PTA when Melinda was in school, and it's very rewarding when you get to know the teachers. And besides just being teachers, you know them as being people, and just the same as what we are. You get to know them in a very different way. Our youngest son had a hard time was having a hard time with reading a few things in school. So when we had Melinda, they had him go to a special school at the university, and I would take him every morning with a new baby and 4 boys. We would go up to the university so he could take classes for his reading and his writing because he was behind. But I'd sit out on the lawn with my 3 boys and a baby girl, and then we'd go home, have our lunch, and it was just one of those things that you learn as a mother. You have responsibilities, and we do as we have to take care of our kids. I started teaching primary when our youngest son was 3 years old, and because he could go to primary, I took on a class of the 5-year-olds. I think they were called the Stars. But I taught until all of the boys were out of primary, and then I went in as a secretary in the primary, and enjoyed that job very much. And remember when they had the primary drive pennies. I was the one that everybody brought all their pennies to, and I had to roll and count all the pennies. It was quite a job, and I will never forget it. But I had my kids to help me do it, and my husband. Then I went in as a counselor, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. But after our oldest one got out of primary, I decided I needed a change, but I went church service. I went in as my primary, and then I was a visiting teaching. I am still a visiting teaching, and have been for 47 years. I worked on the activity committee with my husband, and some really fun people that we had met at church. We were there for all their activities and had a lot of fun planning different things. My husband has never really been active in church. I did think when we got married that we might end up getting married in the temple, but it just wasn't the thing for him at the time. I've worked in the Relief Society and in school PTA for many years. I still am involved as far as we don't attend church on Sundays, but I am very involved in the Relief Society and doing different things at the ward. And my husband's right along with me when on the activity committee. He works right along with me, and I really appreciate that. Some of my best friends are people that I have met in the Word, and the same with our boys, having all 4 boys. And our little girl, we had so many of the young people in the Word that it was good for our kids to be active in church. And I hope someday they will all get a little more active and carry on where I wish, and I still hope to this day that someday we will get a little bit farther in the church. I was very active in PTA as when our boys were in school. I was on the committee when they had a special luncheon or something for the Teachers Appreciation Day. I was one of them that went over and we decorated and got the food and everything ready. Like I said, I had a group of wonderful girls that lived in our neighborhood, and we did things together. But it was nice to help the teachers and show them that we did appreciate the work they were going through. When our kids got out of grade school, our boys, I didn't get active in the junior high and high school. I did just with their classes, but as far as with the school itself, I didn't. But our kids all did well in school, and they would come home from school, would sit and do homework, and then their dad would come home and we would have dinner. As a family, we loved to go camping. From the day we bought a big tent, and we would take the kids camping, all the boys and our little girl. And I remember one day trying to train my little daughter, and she had an accident in her pants, and I got a little upset with her because we were rushing to getting ready to go. And I says, I guess we're not going to be able to go if you can't go to the bathroom. And she went on the couch and sat next to our second son, Randy, and started to cry and said, Mommy said, I can't go camping. From that day, we never had an accident. So it was a hard thing to get across, and she had tears and I had tears. I shouldn't have said it, but I did. But like all moms, we have to take some things back. We've loved to camp through all these years. We've always gone. We go get our own wood. I remember a time my husband and I had our station wagon, and we went to get a load of wood. We went someplace, I'm not sure where it was, but the wood had burned. But we dug around in all this burnt wood. We were black, and we had a load of black wood in our station wagon. But it was what we enjoyed doing, and to save money, it was easier to get gas or get wood and put it in our fireplace. All of our family has really enjoyed the fire through the years, and we still do it to this day. Going to the camping, we went up to Idaho camping and took my mother with us, and we were all sleeping in the tent. There was Les and my sister Pat, my big sister Beverly, and her husband Lon, and their 2 kids Mark and Cheryl. And we're all sleeping in one big tent. And my mom had never been tent camping. Well, we had a hard time. The boys had a real hard time getting her in the sleeping bag. We've never laughed so much in our lives. It was like putting a hippo. One of the boys said it was like putting a hippo in the sleeping bag. But then when it came morning, we had to get her back out. We did. We were all just laughing. It was the light of the whole camping trip. We had a lot of fun with it, but it's something we will always remember, getting Grandma in the sleeping bag. And I think that's the last time she went camping with us, but it was a very fun trip, and we made a lot of trips up to Idaho with her because my sister, the youngest sister Pat, and her husband Les lived in Idaho with their 2 kids. So we would take lots of trips and go up there, but we had a lot of fun. Let's go back to when I was a teenager. I skipped this, but we used to ride our bikes. We had the 4 girls in just about 6 years, and we would ride, my youngest sister and I would ride our bikes up to Suicide Rock, which is quite a ride. But we had friends that were, one was my age and one was Pat's age, and we would take the bikes. We had 2 bikes between 4 girls, but Pat and I would take the bikes and ride up to Suicide Rock and do a lot of bike riding. We really enjoyed the outside. In school, I loved school. I just thoroughly, my twin and I were very good students. We both could have got scholarships, but we didn't follow through with it. But we both kind of went in a different direction. After school, I had gone with a boy for 3 years, Tommy Ward, and I wore his ring around my neck all during school. But when I got out of, just before I graduated from high school, it was Conference Sunday for the church. I met my husband, my sisters, and my mom. We were all out on the railroad tracks pulling weeds. We lived next to the tracks and had a piece of property there that my parents, we had to keep clean. So my husband, or my soon-to-be husband, my little sister's boyfriend brought his friend over, Don, to meet me to see if I would go out with him. Anyway, I went in on my mom's bed and I cried. We were all in our bathing suits out pulling weeds. I went in on my mom's bed and I cried and said I wouldn't go out with him. My sister and my mom finally talked me into it, and that was the beginning of a good relationship. We met first week in April. We got engaged in June, and we got married in September of 1956. It was very short, but it's worked out great. I went to cemetery all the time I was in school and graduated from cemetery. I, like I said, was a primary teacher, and all the way through, to this day, it's hard for me to know that when I met my husband-to-be, we had gone to his ward and sat through sacrament meetings, and I just expected that we were going to get married in the temple, but it hasn't worked out. But he is the best husband. When I worked at 5 and Dime store, which was called Woolworths. I worked as a checker and in the candy department and also in the office. So I kind of worked my way up, but after we had our first son, I just went back for Easter and Christmas, and then after we had our second son, I didn't go, I quit work. I had my hands full. My sister and her husband opened a toy store called Toy Village up on Highland Drive, and when her husband called one day and asked me if I would like to work for him during the Christmas holidays. I was really quite upset. I didn't want to leave my family and go to work, but I didn't want to tell them no. So I did, and it turned into a job 3 days a week. And I enjoyed it. I really did. I enjoyed it, and I worked there for quite a few years during the holidays, and also I'd pay 3 days a week, and my sister would work 3 days. And then we both worked on Saturdays. So it wasn't a lot of hours, but it was nice to help them. And we actually bought our 77 Thunderbird, yellow Thunderbird, with the money I made at the toy store, and I was always grateful for that. My husband and I have traveled quite a bit. We didn't do a lot with our kids, but we have been to a lot of Acapulco. We've been to Hawaii twice. We've been a lot of states. We've never been back east any farther than, let's say, Texas and Alabama. We went to a few of those, but we've never been back east. I would love to someday. Maybe that have to be later on. But we have made had many different vacations that we have thoroughly enjoyed. We went first trip to Hawaii. We had never really been that far, and we were going with my big sister Beverly and her husband Lon, and my sister had her two kids. That they were the kids. Our kids were grown, and most of them were married when we went. But we got to California where we had to a layover for planes, and we got a call on the red alert, and so we had to find out what it was. Well, my sister's first grandson had died, and we had to come back to Salt Lake, so we got the next plane and came back to Salt Lake. And later on, it was a really hard time for all of us, but later on, Lon made plans and that for all four of us to go back to Hawaii. And it wasn't quite, we still had the feeling. It was a year or so later, but it was a very fun trip, very, very fun. But just knowing that the baby had died, Mark and Michelle's baby had died, it just put a little glitch in it, but I think we always had him on our mind. But we really enjoyed doing our traveling with Bev and Lon, the ones with the toy store, and I was very close with my sisters, and everything we have done has been with family. We were going to get wood, and my husband was going to go fishing, and it was vacation time. We had a new little blue Datsun with a cab over the back, and we took our daughter Melinda and her little friend Jacqueline with us, and they were in the back of the truck, in the shell of the truck, and we got up to the mountains, and a Forest Service truck came around the corner and going a little bit too fast, and he turned his head because he had never seen curtains in a Forest Service station, and these were white curtains hanging. He took his eye off the road. He ran into us and our new blue truck, and that's all I could think of was my blue truck. But I had hit my head on the mirror and the dashboard. But they took us in the ranger station and had us stay there for a while and put cold rags on my head. The girls weren't hurt, and we were so thankful, and my husband wasn't hurt. But we called my brother-in-law, Lon, from there, and he came up the mountains and picked us up and brought us home, but he wanted me to stop at the hospital, and I said, no, I'm fine. I've just got a headache, I'm fine. Well, the headache continued for quite a few weeks, and ended up at the doctor's, and I had to have neck surgery. They took a piece of bone out of my hip and replaced it in my neck. I was home from the hospital, I think it was 2 days with a brace on my neck, and I got my right leg my left leg got real red and swollen. I didn't know what to do. Nobody was home. I called my neighbor, and she ran me up to the doctor's office. And anyway, they put me directly into the hospital. It was a very, very trying time. I'm a person that doesn't complain. I will be sick, I will be hurting, but I will never say it. But this time I didn't have any choice. We had one doctor come in, and well, we had a few doctors come in and check things out. The one doctor said the only thing he could do would be to take my left leg off. We were very upset with the situation, and there was a doctor in the hospital that had heard about it, and he came into the room, and he says, I have a doctor that works in my office up at LDS Hospital. He says, I'd like I've talked to him, and he says he thinks he can help you out if you will consent to come up to the LDS Hospital. Through lots of tears, not knowing what to do, we decided to do it. So they took me in an ambulance up to LDS Hospital, and my first thoughts in the when they put me on the little bed to take me into the ambulance, they put a red blanket on me. I said, oh, don't put that on me. I don't want to be that noticeable, be taken out and put the red blanket. They chuckled at it. It was kind of a fun deal, but I didn't want to be embarrassed. We got to the hospital, and they ended up doing surgery on me. We had, by the time I was through, I don't remember for sure how many surgeries I had. The middle part of me, they did them in my leg, and a lot of abdominal surgeries. Everything was redone. I ended up having 26 pints of blood, and I think there was something like 18 plasmas that I had. I was in the hospital for a period of 7 weeks, so it was really hard having my girl home. She was 12, and my boys had all got married, so she was by herself. It changed my life in many ways. I was very grateful they didn't have to take my leg off, and I still wonder today what I would be doing if they had. But I just made up my mind I was going to make the best of what I had, and nothing was going to get me down. And to this day, I still have leg problems, and I always will. It's just something that's, a lot of things have been changed around for me. But I do everything. I do more than what the doctors, even today, think I ought to be doing. But it's my way of living. I do lots of yard work. I love working in my flower beds. I used to always cut the lawn when we had a regular mower, but I cannot, a power tool I cannot use. I can do a lot of things, but don't hand me a power tool. I cannot do it. Life has changed through the years for us, and we've accepted all the different changes. My neighbors in our neighborhood, I am called the weed lady, and that goes back to my gardening. When my kids were little, we had horses in the field next to us, so the weeds grew up against the barbed wire fence that was there. So I would go out over on the other side and pull the weeds so they didn't get in my garden. And since then, I've been the weed lady, and even today, I'm always with my dandelion digger getting dandelions or weeds out. But last night, the neighbor, I had my dandelion digger, and he hollered and he says, "Come on over, I've got plenty over here for you." But I just had a couple of weeds to take out of my sidewalk, and so I did do that. But I enjoyed the outdoors, and I enjoyed the indoors too. I like things clean, and I always have. And if something's laying in the wrong spot, it is picked up and it's moved. But my sister-in-law, Marge, has always said, "We come down to your house, there was never anything out of place. With you having 4 little boys, there was never anything out of place in your home." And that's always made me feel good that I do take care of my home. We've been married it'll be 62 years this year. We've been in our home for 59 years. And we've added on to our home. We added a nice big family room, a spa room with a hot tub and a laundry room. And we have enjoyed. We have a big yard, corner lot, and we enjoy it. It is our family home. We have all of our holidays at our home. This last Easter, we had 40 of us there for Easter egg hunt, and we had ham and turkey and all the trimmings for our dinner. And it's for the holidays. It's family that comes to the family home, and it's always been that way, and I pray that we will be able to keep doing it through the years. A funny story, a year ago last Christmas, we knew we were going to get some new babies during the year, and I was sitting next to my daughter-in-law and granddaughter, and I says, "Guess what? Next year, I'm going to be busy holding all the new babies for Christmas Eve." And I says, "I guess you guys are going to have to do all the work." And my daughter-in-law took me serious, and that last Christmas, Christy and her girls got together. They did all the food and everything we needed for Christmas Eve. And so I got to hold my babies. Christy wouldn't even let me help with the dishes. It was all cleaned up. But oh, how much I appreciated holding those new babies. They were just so cute. We had 4 little new ones and a little 4-year-old. But it just was a treat, a very big treat. So our family has been a family that works together, stays together. And my husband and I have had a very good life. We've had a lot of struggles. As newlyweds, we had very poor. My husband worked at Sweeps County Company. It wasn't a good paying job, but he didn't have the education to go into something that was what he enjoyed doing. And he stuck to it for all those years. But we had a hard time. He would work for my dad once in a while in the Flagstone work and do a few odd things for him. And one Easter, we always made sure our boys had new shoes and clothes for Easter. No matter how much money we had, we would go without in order to have them dress nice for Easter. And Don, my husband, was working for my dad. And the shoe store is closed at 6 o'clock, and it was getting so late, and he hadn't come home to get the boys to go get shoes. I didn't drive. And finally he came home. We ran to the shoe store, and we were able to get shoes with the paycheck my dad had given him for our boys for Easter. And that was just a special day for me to see, and it's to see the kids clean, in new fresh clothes for Easter. I have always enjoyed that, and it gives me a really good feeling that we were able to do it. I say we started out with nothing. Lived in a basement apartment for a couple of years until our second boy was born, and that's when we found our house. It was called Granger at the time, and it is now West Valley. It has really grown. We had dirt streets around us. We could walk over to where Valley Fair Mall is. It had a little grocery store and a little shop, the clothes shop. I would go over and buy my kids' school clothes. My neighbor and I would take 2 strollers and take all the kids over, and we would go shopping over the little store. But since then, it's nothing but highways and big stores, lots of traffic, lots of stop signs, red lights. It has changed so much. I don't have my quiet little area that we used to have. But we enjoy our home. We enjoy our neighbors, and we really never want to leave because it is our kids' home. And until we aren't around anymore, I hope we will be able to continue with our kids' help in having our family functions and keeping our family together, because I think it's so easy for families to fall apart. And we have been able through the years, through all the divorces and marriages, to bring different parts of families together and make them our family. And we have accepted them all, divorced or not divorced. We still accept all of them. And it's something that I hope we have brought into our kids' lives, that they will learn life isn't always easy. We have had many struggles through all later years, through all my surgeries, which my husband says probably 30 of them I've had, but through all the surgeries and the bad times that we have had, we have managed to keep our home, keep our good attitude, and keep up with our families. And our families have been very good to us, and we have appreciated everything they've done for us. Going back when I graduated from, my twin and I graduated from the ninth grade, my dad had had a very serious accident coming, I think from Arizona. He was doing some work in Arizona, but he had gone off the road and been off for a couple of days before anybody found him. When they found him, he was brought here and taken to the county hospital, where he laid for hours without anybody coming to help him and do anything. Was later taken up to the LDS hospital, where he had lots of surgeries. He had when the day they brought him home, we had a hospital bed for him. My mom would have to change all of his bandage, all of his bowels. He had a bag for his bowels, and my mom had to keep them changed. He was in the bed 24 hours a day. And my twin and I came home from school on the day we were supposed to graduate, that we did graduate, and the hospital bed was empty. I know my first thought was, my dad's gone. My dad and I were a twosome. We were a lot alike. My sister took after my mom, but with my first thought being my dad was gone, I got real broken up. But all of a sudden, he comes wheeling from our backyard in a wheelchair. The first time he had been out to see his rock work. He had his rock work, did his chiseling and stuff of his rock in our backyard. And it was the best thing that ever happened, to see him in that wheelchair. He was able to walk again. He was never able to do heavy work. He did do little jobs through the years. Like my husband and my brother-in-law Les were good helpers when they could put a few hours in with him. But it was never the same. His life was never the same. And I remember going back again, the last Thanksgiving we had with my dad. The boys were in the kitchen taking the turkey. My dad had a big white leather chair he sat in. You could see right into the kitchen from the living room. The boys were taking the turkey out of the oven at my mom's house, and they dropped the turkey. We all thought my dad was just going to get upset. So he didn't say a word. He just looked. But they were able to get the turkey up, put it back in the pan, and we had a very good turkey dinner. But it was just something that my dad just sat there and looked. But my dad seemed like a hard person to get along to, but was as soft as heart. But to see him go through what he did, and then for me to go through what I did with an accident, it was just like I was trading places with him. I was a mother of 4 boys in 6 years. I was a stay-at-home mom. Don, my husband, the dad, worked all the time, worked many hours for the money to buy things that we needed for the kids. But he had his sporting activities that he enjoyed doing, his duck hunting, his fishing, his pheasant hunting, his deer hunting, all the things, dove hunting, that he enjoyed doing. He was able to keep doing after we got married, which my life kind of changed, and I really didn't have the time or the money to spend extra from what just having my 4 boys. And in talking, when you're a mom 24 hours a day. You don't really get a break. As much as I enjoyed my 4 boys, it was, like I said, a 24-hour-a-day job. I felt like there was always a baby through the times that I was getting up during the night, giving bottles, feeding the baby, changing diapers, and cooking a lot of times with the baby on my arm and in my arms and trying to cook on the stove. I learned to use my hip in carrying kids around. Even sometimes tried to iron with the kid on my hip. And it's my husband, like I said, he's been a very good husband, a very good father to the kids. But there were times when he would work 6 days a week, then he'd go out duck hunting on Sunday or pheasant hunting, or if he didn't work a Saturday, they would go for the weekend and do the pheasant hunting and deer hunting. But the time that hurt me the worst was I had surgery on my hand, and quite serious surgery. I came not able to use my one hand. He had his truck all ready to go when he brought me home from the hospital, and dropped me in the door with all the stuff, and he took off and he went pheasant hunting. It was Halloween. I have never felt so alone. I had kids coming to the door. At the time, we had the fireplace. I had to keep the wood on the fire to keep our family room warm. It was just one of those times that you feel like, I want to call it quits. But I can't. I have a family. I mean, there's things that you have to stop and think what is the best for you. Is it to keep a family together? Is or to go separate directions. And I know my husband's known there have been times I have thought about it and just felt like I was doing double duty and wasn't getting paid anything back, not money-wise, but I just felt alone in my challenges. I would go help my mom. My sister Beverly, my oldest sister, and I would go in and do my mom's house cleaning. We would wash down her walls, we would paint, we would do the wallpaper. We'd take her curtains over to the laundry, then we'd go over and pick them up and put them back up before we left to go home towards evening time. But we just always did stuff like that for my mom. And then after my dad died, my sister and I were the ones that took my mom shopping. I always had my mom out our place. I just felt like it was my place to help her out. Go and do her yard work, because she never did like yard work. So Beverly and I would go in and do her yard work. And I had a neighbor call my mom once and tell her that they needed to take some of the pressure off of me. I was under too much pressure. And I was surprised to learn that a neighbor had noticed that. But I was never one to accept help. Well, no, didn't get offered help, let's put it that way. But even if I had been, I don't think I would have managed to do it myself. I did have a neighbor, Shirley, that had called my mom that day, but I had problems with a bleeding ulcer. And I had a bushel of, I think it was peaches that needed to be put up. Shirley had me come over to her place, sit up on a stool, and peel the peaches. And she was over the sink and the stove doing the rest for me. And I have never had the feeling I had that day that I was letting somebody do my work for me, because I'm not that type. My work is my work, and it's always been that way because I've never had anybody offer. But I feel like as a mother, you don't get a sick day. You don't get a good night's sleep through all the years. It's something we just take as being a mother, or I always have. It's my mother's job, the cooking the meals, the having a meal on the table. When my husband would come home from work, he never went without. But I feel like I have reached out through so many years, even in helping people move. I can count maybe 10 people that my husband and I have helped move, and we've stayed in the house all these years. But we're just the type that when somebody needs help, we are there. But I feel like as a mother, you don't get that as much. Even when my husband had heart surgery 3 years, I think it's been 3 years back, I was by myself. I felt very alone because we'd never been separated like that, and I felt very alone. My time was spent at the hospital, then I'd come home and do what I had to do at home. But he came through the surgery great. But even when he got home, there's times when, I needed a break. But as a mom and a wife, you take that responsibility on, and I think that's how we are brought up. I always felt bad. My husband would take off and go for the weekend pheasant hunting. A couple of the wives would go with him, or he'd go up to go deer hunting, different things. But sometimes one of the wives or a couple of the wives would go. but that was never offered to me, and I have always felt bad about it. And in talking about it, they said sometimes you just have to talk about it to get off your mind. And I feel good now that I am saying something, and I talked to my husband and my grandson, and they are the one that encouraged me to come and say something, because it's been something that I've held inside for so many years. And Jason has opened my eyes to it, that I need to bring it out. Now my husband doesn't go like that. He doesn't work and then take off and go hunting and fishing, because he is retired and we have more time together, which makes such a big difference. But I know there are times I have gone to bed and cried because I felt so alone, because he was either working or doing his activities, where he felt like my kids were my activity. My family were my activities. They were the love of my life, but they were my work. And I just have 24 hours a day, I felt like it was my responsibility. But I do want to say I love my husband, but I do wish through the years that I hadn't been the type. I won't say that either, because I love helping people. I've always enjoyed, if somebody needs something, I will be there for them. But when my neighbor called my mom and made that comment, I thought, it really does. It makes you stop and think. And I was just talking to my husband and Jason, my grandson, and Jason says, I think you need to put that on that tape and put it out in the open, that moms aren't just moms. They're pulled in so many different directions. But I think sometimes fathers have to realize that I needed some activity. And I know my husband that says, well, you go over to primary with the kids, but I'm still with my kids. I never got to be without my kids. And I don't resent it, but I have always had a little hard feeling that accepting the idea that my husband had his free time, and mine was a 24-hour day job. And I hope this has helped me out by bringing this out in the open. And I think even for my husband and my grandson that just had me do this, I think he's realizing the same thing, that we have to all take our share. And my husband's a very good husband, a very good father, but I wish we had brought this out. And I know there were times when things got real hard for me that I would have liked to say I quit. I just can't keep doing that. But being the type of person I am, no matter if I'm sick or if I'm hurting, I don't give up. And I keep doing for myself, my family, for my neighbors even. I mean, it's just part of me, and I don't want to leave by saying that I was wronged, because I wasn't. I accepted it and didn't accept anybody to reach out and help me. But I am a giver, and I enjoyed helping people in their time of need. And I just want family to realize that I went through a lot of rough times, but I'm just grateful for my family, and I want to leave it at that. But I just want to say that it's sometimes we have to look at the other side and open up and let them know how we are feeling, that it's hard for some of us to ask for help. And I have never been the one that's been able to do that, and I never will be, even where my husband's concerned. He helps me around the house, and I help him outside in the yard and the stuff like that. So we work together on that. But for the years we're raising my kids, it was a very, very tough time through all my surgeries and what I went through. I felt like I wish there was somebody I could have depended on. But my husband had his activities and his work, and I just felt like that was what a mother was. And so, but I just want to leave with saying that, but I love my family, and I don't resent helping anybody. It always gives me a good feeling when I've helped somebody out, even though no matter how tired or how much I've had to let go in order to do it. But I have accepted it, and I know I'm a mother and will always be a mother first, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. I don't think I'll ever make up to a great-great-grandmother, but there's always a little hope in my heart that we can keep doing this with our family for many years. And I just want to say how much I love them, and I respect my family for what the work they're doing with their families. And I hope if something ever happens to Don and I, that our families will be able to stay together and do the holidays and the different activities that we have done as families. And just want to leave it saying that. Thank you very much for the time. And I'm so thankful today that I have my family, that I'm able to do things and enjoy all of we've got the 18 grandkids and 20 great-grand, and then expecting a couple more great-grand, and we enjoy every one of them. And I just want this to be a good lesson when they get to see this story, to see how we were brought up and how my husband and I, through very hard penny pitching times, that we were able to make it. And through troubles, we've managed to pull through them, even though sometimes they've been awful hard. And I know a few times I could have said, I'm leaving, but we've worked it out. We made it. Our families are doing good, and I just want to thank my family for all they've done for us and how our lives have turned out. And we pray and hope that our families will be well, and that the kids will all stay as close as our family has been, because it's something that a lot of families don't have. And to think that my husband and I started with nothing, and we have such a lot to be thankful for, and we appreciate every minute of it. And we pray for all these new little babies, that they will be able to grow up and have good family lives, that our family will keep growing as these little ones grow and have families of their own, that we will all be together someday. And I just want to say I'm thankful for the way I was brought up, and I just want to ask God to bless our families, that we will live the right way, and our kids will have something to remember. I want to thank Jason, our oldest grandson, for doing this for us as a family, getting us together and being able to express how we feel about our families and how thankful we are that for all that. We started out not having very few pennies, and we survived through thick and thin, and we just hope and pray that our families will be able to do the same, and later on in life we'll see this story and know how much we appreciated them for all they do for us. Thank you.